that first section in, we're going to be adding the next few sections. So I want to show you how to kind of navigate the code. And today I'm not going to use Dreamweaver. So because I'm doing this for home, and this might be something you're doing from home without the access to Dreamweaver, we're not going to use that program. So the first things we want to do is we actually want to look at our site as it is. So I'm going to double click index and we can see kind of where we've left off. So if you remember last time, we styled the H1 tag to create a header. We added some line spacing to our text to kind of make it look a little bit better, change the size, and a couple of other things. But this is essentially where we currently stand with our site. So let's go back and look at the code and actually kind of see what's happening there so that maybe we can kind of look at what we did last time and repeat it for our next sections. So I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to hit open with, and instead of Dreamweaver, I'm going to open with Sublime Text. And you might be using brackets or something similar, but you'll get something pretty close. Now, one thing I want you to notice is the color scheme in here is a little bit different, so don't panic if you're seeing things in red. Whereas in Dreamweaver, a lot of times when stuff was popping up red, it was a problem. In this case, it's just part of the way the color scheme is set. So don't panic if the colors themselves are actually different than what you're seeing. So let's re-review what we're looking at here. So we have our HTML document. In our head, we have all of our styles. So instead of an attached style sheet, all of our styles are here. Anything that's decorating or telling something else how to look or where to be is going to be up here in our style section. All of our physical actual content is down here in the body section. And you can see when I click body or double click it, it shows me the opening and the closing of that box. Now, let's go down here and let's look at all of our different divs. So the first thing we have is div ID, so that's the name header. So that's clearly that header that says Visit Japan. The next div we have, and if I kind of grab it here, hopefully we'll be able to see, the next div we have is called Welcome Section. So I'm aware that this div is the Welcome section, and inside of that we have the Welcome image and the Welcome text. So that's two boxes inside of one box. So what we actually are needing to recreate is this section here, and there's a couple ways to do it. Now we can copy and paste this twice to make the next two sections and then delete the inner content, which might be easier for some people. I'm probably going to do it a different way, but let me show you that first. So if I find the closing tag for this welcome section, and make sure you grab the correct part, and highlight up to the opening tag, hit copy, and then underneath it, hit paste, and hit paste again. And then if I save it, I'll open this and you'll see I'll have three matching sections. So for some people this might be easier. I actually don't think so because I think you're going to get confused as to why you can't change the color of the sections individually. If I did this, what I would need to do is then come back in and delete all of the content, so the welcome text and the welcome image. Same thing here, the welcome text and the welcome image. You can see div tag to div tag, div tag to div tag. And then if I save that again, this is what I'm going to see. So now I have two blank sections, but you can't see the borders. So then I would have to rename them something else, create a new class role for them, and do it that way. I'm not going to do that. Actually, I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to start from scratch because I want you to be sort of understanding what code is happening here. So instead, I'm going to type div, close that tag, and close the box. So basically, all I had to do is start typing it, and the code kind of knows what to put there. So that's one div. Inside the opening tag, I want to give it a name so I know what it is. And this is going to be called Gallery Section, because the next section will be a swap image gallery. Now I'm going to create a second div underneath that div, so I have to make sure I'm under the closing tag, not inside of it. Div, and this time I'll just type ID equals my quotes, and then this one will be called Contact Section. And then I've got to close that caret and close the box. So now I actually do have two divs. If I save this and look at it, you're going to notice nothing's going to show up. You're going to go, well, where are they? The reason you don't see them is because they don't have anything in them and they don't have any styling. So now I have to write the two styles for these two items. And what is really helpful is if I do come up here, I can see my original div has class welcome. In this case, all I have to do is give these their own unique class, and then I'll be able to kind of get them to show up. So let's look at this class welcome here. Now, if you remember, this little period in front makes this a class rule, which means I can apply it to all kinds of different objects as long as those items in their div tag say class equals welcome, I can apply this class. These classes with the octothorpe only apply to things with those exact names. So if the ID is welcome text, it will apply. I'm going to create rules like this for my next two sections. So I'm going to hit octothorpe, or hashtag I guess as a lot of people call it, and then I'm going to put gallery section. And this is why we want to keep our naming really obvious and simple so that we can remember it when we actually are doing the next steps. Now I want the width and the height to be the same as the welcome section, so I can just copy that information by typing width 1000 pixels, next line, height, colon, 500 pixels, semicolon, and then background, I want to pick a new color. Now, I don't have my color lookup right now, and I don't want to pick the same color simply because it's going to actually maybe throw me off a little bit. So instead, I'm actually going to make this section maroon. So I'm just going to pick a color that I know will work if I type it in, and then that should get us our first section. So let's save it, exit here, double click, and you can see I now have my next section. And don't worry about the color right now, we can always change that later. This just helps us see what we're looking at. Let's type the next rule for our contact section. So underneath this, and make sure you're outside of the bracket there, hashtag contact section, curly brackets, I'm going to hit enter to open it up, and then I'm going to type that same information. 1000 pixels. Move outside that. Make sure you don't hit enter right there because you'll kind of mess it up. Height 500 pixels, and background, and in this case let's just say white because I know that's a color that will work. Hit save, exit this, and open it again. And now we can see I have my three sections already ready to go. So that's relatively easy stuff. Now, generally at the bottom, I also will have a footer, and let me show you how to add that. So let's do all of those things one more time, and let's do it one after the other. So here's my gallery section, here's my contact section. I want a little footer, so I'm going to add one more div. I'm going to give it the ID equals footer, close that caret, and close that div. Now I'm going to come back up here, and let's do it under the contact section so that these are nicely in order. And I'm going to put my little octothorpe footer, curly Q brackets, hit enter. And now I want the width to be the same, but I don't want the height to be the same since the footer needs to be a little bit smaller. So let's do width 1000 pixels, height, let's try 200. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm not always good at kind of guessing. And then in this case, we'll do background purple because I know a color will show up for that. And then I'm going to hit save. We're going to skip the licensing for the moment, and we're going to exit, double click, and take a look. And actually 200 pixels looks really good for that. So that's perfect. We're going to keep our kind of rainbow of colors here. We can always delete out the colors later and let this be transparent. I just find the colors help you see the lines between the sections, and it's easier to see if something's kind of bursting out of the box or doing something kind of funny. So now the footer section has the least amount of content. Let's go add that in. So we're going to go inside our div, so between the two tags, and we're going to say copyright 2017, and we'll just leave it like that. So very, very, very simple. Now let's take a look at that, and I'm going to show you some things we're going to want to change because I think we'll need to format that text a little bit. So you can see it's black, you can barely see it, it's way up here, doesn't really look super great. So there's a couple ways we can change this. What we can do is we can at a minimum center it, change the color, and then we can always put this in a div and add some margin to it to push it down, or we could add padding to the box to push it down. There's probably a couple other ways we could do it too. There might be it's not very easy to create vertical centering in HTML. It's kind of a weird thing, so we have to sort of do a little workaround. So let's go see if we can change that really quick. We're going to come back up into our footer section, and we're going to type in color, white, and let's check and see if that works. So usually that will, and you can see now the color for the text is white. So a lot of times you would think typing color would mean the background color, but it actually doesn't. It really means the text color. So that means you can actually change the text color for each box if you needed to. And that's going to look kind of rainbow and crazy, but it is a good way to practice understanding how this cascading style sheets situation works. So something worth noting is up here in the body, we defined a color for our text, which is what all the other text is colored as. As these things go down, they're called cascading style sheets because as they go down into the sections, different things have priority. So sometimes if that didn't work and it stayed as this, it has to do with the fact that this is taking priority over this. And there's some different ways that you kind of look into that, sort of understand how that works, but it's just something to note that the changes are progressive. So it's like this is basically overlapping that information. Without this definition, it would assume the thing from earlier. So kind of little note, let's do text alignment. And you can see what's so nice is even in these coding programs that aren't Dreamweaver, these will pop up. So I'm going to go text align, center, and you can see it knows exactly where I'm going. Let's exit, double click, and now our text is centered. So that's relatively easy. Let's try adding some padding to the top to push this text down. So we'll go padding, and I know exactly what's going to happen here, but I'll show you what will happen. So padding, and now this is a 100 or 200 pixel box, so let's add 100 pixel padding, and that should bring it somewhere close to the center, or so we think. After saving it and exiting, you'll notice, well, it did bring it 100 down, but it also pushed the box open. And this has to do with, I guess, what I call the box math. Whenever you add padding or bubble wrap inside or margin spacing outside, it actually will open up the box. It makes the box bigger. So instead of this being a 200 pixel box, it's a 200 pixel box plus 100 pixels padding, which makes it a 300 pixel box. So to fix that, all we do is take this down to 100, and the 100 padding will push it open back to 200. So let's check that one more time. Should probably scoot that over. Double click, and it's definitely a bit better. We might have to adjust it a little bit more, so maybe we bring it down to like 75 or something like that. So we have to play with it, but this is one way to do it, and I think this is actually probably one of the easier ways to kind of try and vertically center at least a single simple line, and that actually looks much better. So 75 padding, it's pretty close on either side, so I'm happy with that. We'll leave that as it is. If you're having trouble getting the copyright symbol, you can look it up because there's actual code for it, and you kind of have to look it up. So copyright symbol, HTML, and you can see there's actually sometimes like a weird way to do it where you have to type in kind of like a strange thing to get it, because if we type this in our code, it's going to assume it's actually a piece of code. So you have to create these little shortcut abbreviations to kind of get that. So if we come down to this chart, we can see that the entity name is this, and we should be able to type that in right down here. So let's give that a try. Minimize this, double click our index, and we can see, ta-da, there's our copyright symbol. So this is probably as far as you'll need to get for tomorrow's class, and then next class we're going to go back in and start adding our other content. So it's really relatively easy. It's the same thing we did here, where we'll add a div, create our picture, add a div, create our text. We'll just do them in the opposite order here. And then for this one, we're going to do a swap image gallery, which is very slightly more challenging, but not particularly difficult. The biggest issue is getting everything nicely aligned and having it float correctly. And then you just add a teeny bit of code to tell the images to switch, and it's pretty easy stuff. After we add the content into these two sections, the next thing we're going to do is create a wrapper that centers our website, and we're actually going to create our navigation. So we'll insert another box here with our clickable titles, and then we'll create anchor tags so that we can jump to the different sections of the page. So that'll be our next two lessons. But for now, that's all you need to do to add your sections to your site.